Hello again, friends. Today I wanted to cover the differences between Shadow Paladin in Vintage and Megacolony in Vintage, specifically with their set 4 ride chains. Both of the clans have their best deck being their set 4 ride chain, even though neither clan ever wants to use their set 4 ride chain's activated ability or automatic ability because they both suck. These are effectively just ride chain vanilla 11Ks, and they are still the best bosses in each of the deck, and that is hilarious. But it even gets more hilarious when you try and compare the decks. So when I say that these two decks are very similar, I'm not joking. You have a 9K, call the top card of your deck. You have the boss whose skill you never want to use, that's part of the ride chain. You got the ride chain, you got Counterblast 2 for card advantage, 12K attacker, vanillas, perfect guards, ride chain, tech choice, 8 crits, 4 draws, 4 heals starter. Now, if we go over to Shadow Paladin, and we look at the list, we have, obviously, the grade 3 whose skill we never want to use, 9K call top card of your deck, ride chain, 12K attacker. This one, you can actually go a little bit different with Shadow Paladin, to be fair. You don't have to run Counterblast 2 on hit draw card, but you can. You could actually run Maka, which is Counterblast 2, get +1 by calling a Karen from your deck and having a 16K row. That's very nice. I recommend you do that. I just did this for the memes because there's only 3 cards difference between the decks entirely. You have grade 1 tech choice, perfect guards, vanillas, grade 1 ride chain, 8 crits, 4 draws, 4 heals, starter. These decks are the same freaking deck. Now, you could, in theory, run Phantom Blaster Overlord in the Shadow Paladin deck, but you'd be losing Bobbed Car, and Bobbed Car is a better card than Phantom Blaster Overlord. I'm sorry, it just is. Phantom Blaster Overlord is a Persona Blast to get plus 10k and a crit, which is better than Phantom Blaster Dragon's effect, but you're already running Phantom Blaster Dragon anyway. And Phantom Blaster Overlord as a 13k defense wall sucks. He's just not good. The thing that V Mundi got incredibly wrong back in the day was they said, oh, cross-ride defense is what makes these decks good. No. What made MLB good was static crit and the ability to search your deck for the grade 3 if you missed it, or for any of the grade 2 pieces with the starter. Like Wingle Brave was what made MLB good. Without Wingle Brave, MLB sucks. And that bonus crit was really what made it. It wasn't the defense. And with Kagero, the reason why the Kagero Crossride was so strong was because that deck, when played optimally, is not focused on restanding. It is focused on using Berserk Dragons and Chimnaras and Gatling Claw Dragons to snipe your opponent's back row so that they don't have a boost. And you have a limited number of boosters in this format because your perfect guards are grade 1. That means that you have only 9 potential boosters, assuming that you don't ride a perfect guard in your entire deck. If you go through a third of your deck, you're expecting to get 3 boosters. If you get a Berserk Dragon and a Gatling Claw, a Berserk Dragon and a Chimnara against those 3 boosters, they only have 1 booster now, and you're going to be targeting the ones that's not behind the Vanguard and just using your PGs on their Vanguard swing. So now their rear guards can't hit without triggers. That is what Dragonic Overlord the End did. That's why it was dominant. It had nothing to do with it being static 13k without being used in conjunction with that back row retirement. 13k defense in Shadow Paladin is borderline irrelevant, especially in this format where all of the top meta decks have 12k attackers and they frequently run vanillas, and a vanilla line also hits 18k. So because that's the case, Phantom Blaster Overlord is just a vanilla grade 3 that you're running in your deck to potentially get 13k. That's cute and all if you have Karen behind your Vanguard, and then you can hit 21k that way. But outside of that specific use case, I don't see why we're playing Phantom Blaster Overlord. The only other reason would be is if you got rid of this as a tech slot card, which I don't recommend because Gururubau is insane. Then you could run Apocalypse Bat and then start soul blasting what limited soul you have, and use the Apocalypse Bat with a rear guard Phantom Blaster Overlord and hit 21k that way. I don't really think that's that great, especially since you already have 20k with your Donnerschlag or with your Masquerade and a Karen boost, and your Karens are basically what you want in your back row everywhere, so you're starting to hit pretty limited space there with what options that you have. I'm not sure that that's worth it. So I don't think Phantom Blaster Overlord is even necessarily worth running. So if I were to play set 5 Shadows, I think that Bobbed Car is better than Phantom Blaster Overlord anyway. Now, it should be noted that objectively speaking, set 4 Giraffa versus set 4 Phantom Blaster Dragon, Giraffa is objectively superior. It's not a contest. And you might be thinking, but Tim, if the decks are so similar, what's different about them? What does Giraffa have that Shadow Paladin doesn't that makes them so much better? And the answer is, hilariously, and only, they have another crit. 8 crit versus 4 crit, Giraffa is superior. Now with set 5, they're basically the same deck. However, I'm going to make the case here, and this is the hottest take of them all, between Damned Charging Lance, the activated effect of Phantom Blaster Dragon, Counterblast 2, retire 3 of your Shadow Paladin rear guards, this unit gets 10k at a crit. Between that and Giraffa's effect, which is on hit, Counterblast 2, retire 2 of your Megacolony. Then you get to choose 2 of your opponent's grade 1 or less rear guards and retire them. Giraffa's effect is better than Phantom Blaster Dragon's. It's not close. Giraffa's effect is not good. It is you -2, your opponent -2. However, if you are playing in a format where your opponent only has a certain number of 12k attackers, or they aren't even running 12k attackers because they're not playing one of the top meta decks, Giraffa's ability to snipe back row as an 11k defense unit allows him to play functionally identically to how Draconic Overlord the End functions. The only difference is it's a lot easier to compensate for. But if your opponent has mostly 10k grade 3s and 10k vanilla grade 2s, and you are sitting there as an 11k defense unit, that allows you to actually play a similar game to Draconic Overlord the End with Giraffa. I don't personally recommend doing that, but you have so much trash that you can get out. Like, let's say you play Violent Vesper, top call a trigger, you swing that 14k into a 9k interceptor, that way they either have to spend 10k shield or they're losing the 5k shield, that way you can pass the critical pressure over to your other row, which would probably be an Iron Cutter Beetle and a Phantom Black. Then if your Giraffa hits, you can sack your Vesper trigger line since that's already garbage, and then you can take out 2 of your opponent's strategic boosters, and now you have this 11k defense unit that's able to actually perform very well defensively. And in addition to that, this is already a ride chain, so it already has those natural inherent defensive advantages when you're playing it and you go first. And this is the reason why I was able to beat set 12 Revengers with this deck, this exact deck, and I took 0 damage just because of how powerful going first is. And Giraffa ends up being the same tier as Shadow Paladin because it is able to make use of the same advantages that Shadow Paladin can for that early defense. And then its later game defense is even better because it has Megacolony Battler B. So my hot, spicy take is that Megacolony is stronger than Shadow Paladin in Vintage. It is actually super close, but the 2 decks being basically the same thing leads to Megacolony versus Shadow Paladin having such a close matchup that it really depends on what's going to give you the edge. But because Giraffa is better than Phantom Blaster Dragon, and because Megacolony Battler B as the tech choice is superior to all of the other tech choices, I do think that Giraffa edges out. So anyway, this was my TED Talk. Thank you for coming to it. Have a good one.